Oh,
territory.
what's Cincinnati's own Stonehenge?
That is building. So with the crematorium, it has all these rumors, but the stones came from the Cincinnati Chamber of Commerce building that burned down in 1911.
Okay, that's how that
that's
all.
a great segue.
So they
okay.
took the remainder, and architect students wanted to keep it, and so they made a monument because of this architect was a big deal back then.
Ready? All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fantastic episode of the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities presents Hometown Haunts. I am your host, Kat Cloco, and with me in the shadows tonight are Christina Wald and Jen Kohler. Just so you know, you can follow us on Twitter at CinCabinetCurio and Cincy Cabinet of Curiosities on Instagram. And if you have your own hometown haunt, urban legend, creepy cryptid, or other fascinating little history bit to share with us, you can send them to hometownhauntedmail@gmail.com. And I personally manage that, so I'd be reading all your wonderful submissions. Also, we're an official podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Find us on iTunes at Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities. Please rate and review us so other spooky lovers like you can find us out there in the big wide world. So, this is our first ever Cincinnati Paranormal Potluck episode, where all of us are bringing in spooky stories from around the region to share with one another. So, and before we get started with all of that, we have Christina's weird thing she found this Easter holiday.
Well, it seems like in social media, people are always like showing like creepy pictures of kids with the Easter bunny. I don't know. Have you taken Cy to see the Easter bunny?
I have not.
I mean, I could say, it is very creepy. Maybe somebody should redesign it to be an attractive furry design or something. But
no,
most of the Easter bunnies are pretty terrifying. They
need reworking from like Disney Imagineers, but even the Imagineers don't get it right all the time. So history of.
Yeah, so I was reading, and of course it's comes from European. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of those old European tales. I mean, we could probably get into, a lot of these anthropomorphs and stuff tend to be ubiquitous through a lot of cultures, don't they? Like different animals, especially if you think of even Norse mythology, where you have Loki turning himself into, did he turn himself into a horse? Is that what?
I don't know about Loki. Norse mythology is unfortunately one of my weak spots.
Oh, okay.
But Zeus turned himself into horses and swans and
there's a lot of different things like this. So it says, and this is from bustle.com, and it says that other countries have different animals who are responsible for delivering eggs. Swiss children have their eggs delivered by a cuckoo, which is kind of a cool idea. And Germans wake up to the work of a fox. And they think that the Easter bunny might be, even though it's very popular in Germany, might come from the tradition of the Osterhase or Osterhase, the egg-laying hare. And that is like an old, isn't that where the name Easter comes from? Eostre? It's an ancient German goddess who apparently saved a freezing bird by turning it into a rabbit that could lay eggs. And so that's the old myth. And the story is the first reference of the Easter bunny comes from a 1572 German text. So, it's interesting how long some of these traditions are. We don't know why they kind of survive in bits and pieces without any context. But it's possibly a tradition that was brought over with immigrants that came here. And, it seems like nowadays myths kind of get, what would you say, filled out by, say, popular marketing and mass marketing and that sort of thing. And that's how you end up with a Easter bunny in every store If you've ever worked at a marketing agency, everything is divided up into seasons. And perhaps that's how these things get ensconced out of context into, like, when you think about Christmas, how people complain about, like, as soon as Christmas is over, you see Valentine's Day stuff. I mean, Valentine's Day isn't that important a holiday, but that's sometime when they feel like they can make people buy candy and flowers and stuff. And so everything's kind of segmented into these concepts. So from ancient German myth, well, maybe not ancient, 1572, middle-aged German myth to marketing.
Middle-aged German myth. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's not quite so old. It still has a spring in its step.
Yeah. I mean, 1572 is, what is that? That's kind of around Renaissance-ish times.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's older than
there.
that. I mean, one thing that they're finding out is that many tales are way older than they ever thought. So who knows? But it is one of the weirder things. And, a lot of the stuff even predates Christianity. It's like worshiping other deities and, before everything was sort of unified into, today's more, Christian themes, but other ones too. I mean, that's the thing that's kind of interesting, is that so many local myths end up getting tied into, like, when missionaries would come, and still people secretly would do like their own tradition still, and that sort of thing. Maybe this kind of is a relation to that.
Yeah, I know recently in the Wiccan groups, we just had the worm moon. So it's just, you got a lot of stuff happening right now.
Yes, traditions.
Actually, I forgot to add this, but to our outline. So this is surprising Christina and Jen for our listeners. Happy Dingus Day.
Ooh, so tell us about Dingus Day.
Yes, please do.
All right. So I am a transplant to Cincinnati, and I grew up in South Bend, Indiana / Mishawaka, Indiana, which is one of the epicenters of the Polish tradition of Dingus Day. And this Dingus Day is today, Monday, which is when we record. And so happy Dingus Day to all of my fellow friends from the wonderful cities of South Bend, Indiana, Elizabeth, New Jersey, Bristol, Connecticut. And also, we cannot forget Buffalo, New York, which is the reigning champion. They are the epicenter of Dingus Day in the United States. So basically what it is, it's a post-Lenten holiday. It is always celebrated the Monday after Easter. And basically it's when you just eat. It's just Easter part 2. You just eat. Specifically, you eat Dingus Day sausages if you're from South Bend, Indiana. And those are a special spice blend of sausages. They generally only make them this time of year. We keep them frozen in our freezer. It's the only time I will eat pork product is when it is Dingus Day. Traditionally, on this day, on Monday, young boys who aren't married will splash girls with water. And on Tuesday, the day after, women will return the favor on Mondays, boys will sprinkle the girls with water and tap them with pussy willows. On Easter Tuesday, women will return the favor. I will be honest, I have never seen that happen. We just party and drink.
This just sounds like something out of Midsommar, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Kind of. So, pussy willows, water.
Yeah.
What
DingusDay.com, which is sponsored by the city of Buffalo, New York, says, why pussy willows? Pussy willows play a major part in Buffalo's Dingus Day celebrations as men and women flirt with playful taps. Branches of the plant are used as pussy willow, as the pussy willow is one of the first budding plants of spring. It's also kind of linked to the Easter Bunny being a fertility thing. So anyway, I would like to say happy Dingus Day to all my friends.
Where does the name Dingus come from?
I believe it's a saint. The saint.
Okay.
It's Saint Dingus.
Because I've heard people being called a dingus.
Yeah.
So I'm a little like, I have no idea where that comes from. So now I'm really curious.
I looked it up. So Smingus Dingus is a Roman Catholic celebration held on, oh, that's today, Easter Monday across. Wow, I cannot read things today. This is great for a potluck. It's celebrated on Easter Monday across Central Europe and parts of the United States. The tradition is widely associated with Poland and observed by Polish diaspora communities. Hi there, South Bend, Indiana, particularly among Polish Americans who call it Dingus Day. Let's see, origins. The celebration has been traced back to the 14th century but may have happened earlier. Pre-Christian origins involved the celebration of the March equinox. The origins of the word dingus are obscure, as it may come from the German dingier, the eggs that are owed, or dingus, or ransom. The occurrence of the celebration across Western Slavic and Lachitic nations, including Hungary, suggests a common origin in pagan mythology. So there you go. It's another pagan fraternity holiday. This is just the greatest. I swear I have had nothing to drink today. Water and coffee. And I am just slipping and sliding all over the English language. So I'm sorry, listeners. So yes, Dingus Day.
Oh, well, that's
Go get
really
yourself a
interesting.
dingus.
Well, happy Dingus Day.
Yeah. Now we know something to celebrate right after Easter.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
there's all these different. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say it's kind of like Boxing Day a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of is.
There's all these different, like, if you look at, like, there's the Catholic saint days, and then there's the Greek Orthodox Church, which are they have other saints that they celebrate, and like have all these different, ways of celebrating. Because it has like that midsummer kind of thing where it's like
it really does.
It feels like they might sacrifice something afterwards or something.
Yeah, it's.
Do old people jump off a cliff afterwards, or
no? You drink. It's. I knew that there was something to do with pussy willows, but honestly, the people that actually participate at home, this is what we do. We get a bunch of Dingus Day sausages from the local Martin's, which is the supermarket chain there. It's not even a chain; it's a local thing. Anyway, and then we get a bunch of Kluski noodles, which are really thick flour noodles. Yeah, that are boiled in chicken broth. I can barely find them around here, but once in a while I can. And then there's going to be some kind of sauerkraut or soured cabbage of some sort. And then there's beer. There is so much beer. Like, you're insane if you bring a salad to one of these things, because unless it's a noodle salad, and then somebody may peck at it. And then usually it's just leftovers from Easter. So you have leftover ham and leftover cake and all sorts of stuff. And it's just another reason to have a big meal, and after Lent, basically. So and like I said, South Bend is one of the epicenters of Dingus Day. There is some participation in Chicago, but it's mostly South Bend and Buffalo, New York are the two big places. Then I think also a little bit in New Jersey. Cleveland, which is where my family's from, does a small one, which is why we talk about the melon heads tonight.
Cool.
Yeah. All right.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And now you know about a random food holiday.
Yeah. Well, it's what you kick off Lent with Mardi Gras, and then you end Easter with Dingus Day.
Well, like Cincinnati has one Polish thing, and that's the punchki, the really filled jelly donuts that you can get. And there's one little bakery that's actually in Indiana that makes authentic punchki. So, but I've seen them in Kroger, and when you look at them, it looks like it says Patsky on the label, but it's pronounced punchki. So, and they'll make a version of it for Oktoberfest. Buskin actually makes them. So there's going to be the donut that has heavy cream in it, and then they put
the cream puff
or custard, and then all that. That's a version of a punchki. So,
Mm.
oh my God, they're huge. Your entire caloric intake is in one of them.
Yeah, now I'm hungry.
I
Thanks.
know,
Sorry.
right?
I did eat dinner.
Yeah, so did I.
All
But I'm
right.
kind of drooling.
I know. Now I
Memories.
want
I love cream
pastries.
puffs. Yeah, there's nothing
Yeah.
better than so I guess for the potluck, Jen, you're going to tell us about the Buffalo Ridge Crematorium.
Yes. So this is interesting because I actually Jeff and I have talked so many. Jeff Cease, who I work with at the Enquirer, he's the archivist there. He knows pretty much all Cincinnati history, and I distinctly remember him telling me about this one day in my office years ago. So it's this place that has all this lore around it with satanic rituals, and that it was a crematorium where they didn't burn the bodies, they just left them out there in the field to rot. And in the surrounding area on Buffalo Ridge Road, when you drive down it, you see a dog with glowing green eyes, you see a headless bride, you see all the typical kind of urban legend craziness, right? But in truth, this place has never been a crematorium. It originally started as they were trying to build a observatory there, and the stones, and they didn't finish it because they ran out of funding, as you know, it happens with everything. So, but the stones for this place came from the Cincinnati Chamber of Commerce, the original that burned down. It burned down in 1911. So people didn't want to get rid of the granite that was used to build it, because it was a very particular granite. And so they carted some of it up there, and then they ran out of funding, and for whatever reason, it just stayed there for years. And if you go to creepycincinnati.com, you can see photos, and there's history of it there. And I read it, the whole thing. And then I think he went back in 2014 and he said that it was filled in. So you can't see the structure anymore, because it was this really cool half moon curve. Like you could see where it could be an observatory, but you could also see, I mean, if you stumbled across that in the woods, you'd be like, what went on here? It's creepy. Like it was like this curved deep inlet in the ground, and it had all these stone walls. Anyway, I digress. So, but what is also interesting is that a few people did die in that fire in 1911. So if there's any residuals left over in the stones from that could have been carried over, right? But also, if you want to see some of the stones that were used in the building of the Cincinnati Chamber of Commerce, some architect students at University of Cincinnati decided to save them. And they really respected the architect, H.H. Richardson, I think is who he was. Let me just, yeah, so. H.H. Richardson, he built the Cincinnati Chamber of Commerce, and he did a lot of really cool stuff. So they held this huge contest. The winner designed what is there now, and there's however many. It's in Burnett Woods, and if you go there, there's a big sculpture, and in the middle there's a big upright vertical stone, and down it you can see Cincinnati Chamber. And it's just it's this really cool pink stone. It has the curvatures and everything that were carved into it that make all of our old buildings look so cool. So as far as I know, there's nothing happening in Burnett Woods from the stones. Like if any hauntings or anything have been reported there.
I like how you added, it was like, it's not from the stones. The hauntings aren't from the stones.
They could be. I mean, they could or they could not be. The thing is, what I find it fascinating is that how did this lore get started that it was a crematorium and satanic rituals happened there? I mean, did somebody go there, find it one day and go back to town and say, just made up this story? Because
I think a lot of it is just made up over booze.
Yeah. Well, and from what I understand, I did watch a video on YouTube of these two girls freaking themselves out driving down Buffalo Ridge, because it is a very steep and curvy road from what I understand. Okay. They were driving down at night to see if they could see anything, and they didn't. But I think people have had bad car wrecks there and probably have died on the road. But if you're interested, it is in Hamilton County, Miami Township in Hamilton County. And it's near I can't remember the name of the forest. It's bordered by Great Parks Mitchell Memorial Forest.
Okay.
And I've never heard of that forest, even though I lived in Cincinnati for over 20 years. And I did find an article in the Enquirer in 1988 that said it had all these plans for it to turn it into, I'm probably thinking more along, it would turn it into something like Winton Woods, where, you know, there were horseback riding, and I just don't think those, to be honest, I didn't go any deeper than that, but I don't think it came to that, because I've never heard, like, all my years working at the Enquirer, I've never read an event happening out there, like if there was horse riding or anything like that. So
it's in Cleves, Ohio, which is funny because I always thought Buffalo Ridge was in northern Kentucky. I don't know why, but it's in Cleves, and it has a 5-star review on Google Maps.
Ooh, okay. So I'm going to read from
this is 5 out of 5 stars from 10 months ago. And it writes, Drywall Jackson writes, thanks, burned them great.
All right.
Oh, thank you, random person on the internet, for that little laugh. Yeah, burned them real. The only thing I can think of is like a sky burial would be the only use of those, like just laying out the bodies, because I've seen photos of what it used to look like, and like a sky burial, like
I
don't get where they get the idea of crematorium at all, but
I no clue. I mean, I don't even think there wasn't a furnace there. Like, I can understand if you could find something that resembled a furnace or something, but I think it was filled in by Hamilton County Parks because of all the issues and problems they were having, probably with people going out there.
Oh yeah, it's super dangerous, because I'm looking up the old photos from creepy Cincinnati, and it almost looks more like, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, almost looks like 7 stables for horses or cows, and then they're attached to this crescent moon bit, but what it really is just the basement of what would have been this observatory. But and the observatory looks very similar to the one that is in Mount Lookout, so this has 2 extra, instead of 2 buildings, it would be all connected.
Here's one of the urban legends. I found this on Reddit. In the early part of the century, I'm assuming the 20th century, a young woman was trying on her wedding dress in anticipation of her upcoming ceremony. An unknown attacker entered her house and shot and killed her, then decapitated her. Her head was never recovered, and on certain moonless nights, her ghostly body wearing the wedding dress walks the road looking for her head. Sound like Pearl Bryan?
Like excessive. That kind of sounds like Pearl Bryan. And also a lot of vanishing hitchhiker motifs. It has the woman in white and a vanishing hitchhiker and dead bride motif, all wrapped into one delightful story.
Yeah, but there's a whole bunch of links that we can put in the show notes and I just look into it. They're fun reads, and now I kind of want to go drive down the road and see. And see what will happen, or visit the forest, or because I've never been
really
out there.
Cool. I mean, I remember Jeff talking about that in regard, because we did talk about the Burnett Woods thing. Remember when he was on, and you know, he was talking about this urban legend, and I think, you know, a lot of this stuff, you know, was pre-internet, and I think it was easier to make up stories, and you know, people just, you know, you see like some huge area that's been abandoned, and the truth is way less interesting than what people make up. You know, it's sort of like fan fiction almost. You see like an abandoned site, and people just start making up stories about it. I mean, I think it's part of the thing that this whole show is kind of about, and what most hauntings and stuff, it's storytelling. People have always told stories to each other, you know, and you know, talking about how the origins of anything and your way to explain something, you know.
We actually have a term for that. I'm looking it up to make sure that.
And why can't people just say, I don't know? Like,
so
would you say,
this is what the phenomenon is called. And we basically, and when I say we, it's sociological and anthropological ethnomusicology groups. We call this fake lore. Have you ever heard of this term?
No, but I like it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So I wanted to make sure that I got this definition correct. So I yet and again, I am reading from a website. This is just straight up Wikipedia. Let's see how much I just slide all over it. So fake lore or pseudo folklore is an inauthentic manufactured folklore presented as if it were genuinely traditional. The term can refer to new stories or songs made up, or to folklore that is reworked and modified for modern tastes. So basically, and then Richard M. Dorson, our wonderful folklorist from the Indiana University, my alma mater, is the one that helped create this term.
Oh, cool.
In 1950. That's when So yeah, that's what this is. Just think of it, this is how I think of it, is when you're a little kid and you turn to your parent or guardian or older sibling and say, hey, what's that, as you're driving down the street, and they say, just pulling it out of their ass, they just go, oh, that was a crematorium, and they try to tell you some super spooky story. That is what fake lore is, and that's probably how we got like a lot of the stories that we get today. They're done out of jest, they're done out of entertainment, and then they just get, because then to think like little cat going back to elementary school or middle school and then sharing the story like, hey, this is what my uncle said over the weekend about that weird place down the street.
And you have no reason not to believe it, you know, because you trust the adults in your life.
Exactly. So I think that's where a lot of this just stems from. And also never underestimate the amount of alcohol and pot consumed during visiting a lot of these locations.
Especially if you're a teenager hanging out in the woods.
Well, I suppose like when you look at the amount of conspiracy theories these days that are based on all sort of a mashup of everything anyone's ever thought, I mean, you could see how these things happen, you know, people building on them, you know, like where you were just talking about the thing that Jen just read, how it combined 3 different tropes you see everywhere. You know, it seems like I think that explains a lot of like I said, the weird conspiracy stuff that people believe in too. You could probably tie that to many tropes too.
Oh yeah. You start dissecting stories. Actually, with all the stuff that we've been having with political, I remember turning to one of my friends in the paranormal and going, I miss our alien conspiracies. Those were fun.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like we consider those fun conspiracies because they're entertaining to discuss and to believe in. Some people just like debating it just because it's fun to debate it. Not because they wholly believe in it. So and it's the same with ghosts and urban legends. Like, they're really fun to talk about. I like learning the history. Do I believe every ghost story I hear? No. Do I expect you to trust everything that I tell you as a ghost story? Also, no. So,
it reminds me that we need to do a UFO episode.
We do.
I don't want to talk about aliens. Aliens scare me. Do you ever see the movie The Fourth Kind? That came out like,
which is the one with the owl? Was that the one with the owl?
Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, that's the guy, the Alaskan.
No. Yeah, I'm never going to Alaska because of that movie.
Them, like the Flatwoods Monster would be a good one. I know Tim Fuller really loves talking about Flatwoods Monster. And then we have the Kelly Hopkins incident. I know a lot about the alien stuff, though it's not what gets the motor going.
That movie scared the crap out of me. Scared the crap out of me. And I blame Unsolved Mysteries, watching it in the late 80s, early 90s, and their stupid little unexplained UFO freaking hand drawing of the big alien head with the...
Oh, then you're going to love this next tale.
Oh my God. Scared me so bad,
right? Segue.
It just leads, it's my childhood fear of the unknown or whatever. But when I saw the movie, I was in my 30s? Had to be. 20s or 30s. Went home, slept with all the lights on. Did not like that movie, and I will never watch it again.
Well, speaking about large-headed entities that you could run into in Ohio, let me tell you about the Melon Heads of Kirkland. So we're going to be traveling, for our listeners that aren't here in Ohio, we're traveling several hours north to the suburbs of Cleveland, which is where I'm from. And, or not where I'm from, but where my family's from. So I've been there a lot. And I thought I would share with you all my favorite urban legend. And Jen, you're going to love it.
Okay.
So I do want to start by prefacing that there are many melonhead stories. The most prevalent ones are in Michigan and Connecticut, in addition to Ohio. Every single one of them has a different variation with different origins of the term melonhead. We are specifically talking about the Ohio variety tonight. And also, Kirkland is just south of the famously haunted Willoughby, Ohio, which is right along the Lake Erie shoreline. So, with that being said, legend has it there was once a mad doctor known as Dr. Crow. Dr. Crow worked by performing experiments for the United States government after World War II on orphans at his orphanage, located just outside of Cleveland, really just south of it. Okay. The children were sent there by the government, developed large, hairless heads and malformed bodies to do these experiments. Some legends add that these children were suffering from hydrocephalus and that Dr. Crow injected more fluid into their heads for either being a treatment or he was just did it out of malicious curiosity. It is also said that he subjected them to radiation to see what would happen. Each mutant child was described to be between 3 and 4 feet tall, with a large head, glowing eyes, and a delightful set of razor-sharp teeth. There was one theory that the melon heads are actually human-alien hybrids and the descendants of the Area 51 aliens. There you go, Jen. We have the melon heads out for you in Ohio. Eventually, the children killed Dr. Crow and his wife and ate them in the orphanage. And then they burnt down the orphanage by kicking down all the chemicals and the radiation and setting it on fire, and then fleeing into the dense woods around Kirkland, Ohio. They supposedly feed on babies, who are apparently roaming freely around the forests, or hapless people hiking the area at night. Legend holds that melon heads can be sighted along Wisner Road in Kirkland, where Dr. Crow once lived. Also, Mitchell's Mill Road, and around the Holden Arboretum in Chardon Township. The area is densely forested with winding roads and also a popular place for hiking and horseback riding. It isn't uncommon for hikers, fishermen, outdoorsmen, and horseback riders to find slaughtered animals in the woods around Kirkland, or have stories about them being attacked themselves. A hot spot is along the Chagrin River, which is a place that I spent many, many, many summers playing around in, and I have been to the Holden Arboretum and can testify it is really thickly dense forest around there. This is also the focus of a 2010 horror movie called The Legend of the Melon Heads, which is based on the Ohio version of this legend. Allegedly, the legend dates back to the 1950s, where driving down Windsor Road, or Wisner Road, has become an East Side High School rite of passage. According to Bonnie Snyder of the Lake County Genealogical Society for Cleveland Magazine, we'd roll down the wow. We'd roll down the windows and see if we could hear them. If you got out of your car, you were pretty brave. Snyder also had taken an interest into exploring the legend and investigating if Dr. Crow ever existed in the first place. According to her research, looking through census records, newspaper clippings, the Morley Library obituary index, which I didn't know existed, name indexes, city indexes, subject collections, and cemetery books from the earlier part of the 20th century, and has found no evidence of Dr. Crow or his wife ever existing. However, she adds that there was always the chance that he slipped between the census or the city directories. And that is the story of the Kirkland Melon Heads.
How similar is this to like the Montauk stories?
Well, you got a lot of different escaped like inmate stories or escaped monster stories. The Bunny Man of Bunnyman Bridge is another example of that one's a lunatic that escapes and murders people and hangs bunnies from a bridge. So I think it's a pretty popular motif. I find it interesting that this one is slightly before the 1970s, where a lot of urban legends got their start. And it really just seems to be like an old high school prank.
Mm-hmm. And where does the baby eating come from? Because that's something that's like been in that's actually in the Satanic Panic stuff too, going back like to the Middle Ages. It seems like is this like when you're trying to think of what's the worst thing someone could do, and it's like eating babies? Or
it's like it's a writing motif. Like you're trying to create tension, and even though my delivery was not great of what I wrote, it was, you want to bring tension to your horror story. And one of the ways to make your monsters seem even more horrific is that they're eating the most innocent of humankind, which are babies.
And then add bathing in their blood to that.
Yeah, bathing in
even
blood.
Worse.
Yeah. So that, I think that's where that comes from. I like how it specifies babies wandering around the forests, that's getting picked off.
Like that's like the Hansel and Gretel motif.
And I'm just thinking about my son walking around. I'm like, no, I don't think that's going to be happening.
Unless you're a bad parent, you don't want your kid, you just throw them in the woods and they're wandering around.
True.
And then they get eaten by these melon head things.
Yeah.
Well, the experimentation definitely seems like that. I mean, there's that whole, that's kind of what the Montauk thing, which Stranger Things is based on the Montauk experiments that they were doing on kids and stuff. So it seems like during the 50s was definitely that era where you had sort of Operation Paperclip, which is where they brought over all those Nazi scientists, which actually, that isn't a conspiracy. That actually did happen.
Right. Well, also the addition of using radiation was very much a 50s trope,
of course,
that you got.
Because it was all the nuclear experiment. I mean, there was experimentation going on. Now, on children, probably not, but
let's hope not.
I mean, there wasn't I wouldn't say that a lot of the programs the Pentagon spent money on were necessarily noble pursuits. I mean, they did. If you look at Julia Child, it's interesting. Like she worked for the CIA. She's like on the CIA page. She and her husband worked for the CIA in World War II, and then his job when she was learning to cook French food. His job was like to do sort of a dog and pony show on why the US was better than communists. Like, and he did it through a lot of cultural stuff and art stuff and that sort of thing. And ironically,
Wow.
he got fired because he got sort of taken down by the whole McCarthy era.
Oh no.
You know, and was accused, even though he was like working for the US, you know, that was such a paranoid time that he was accused of, I mean, you know, and he thought he was getting a promotion and instead he got fired because they thought that he wasn't, you know, everybody, the Red Scare, they thought everybody was, I mean, it was a very strange time for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they've never really detailed what Julia Child did. But they met, I want to say they were in the Pacific somewhere. I'll have to look it up really quick. But that's where she and her husband met, was, you know, during World War II, working on
Oh wow.
spy stuff. You know, so I've always thought, this is a total different segue. I've always thought Julia Child's such an interesting person. You know, they did that movie, Julie and Julia, and I was like, so really you couldn't sell a story about Julia Child? You had to have I mean, not that the book Julie and Julia is bad, but Julia Child's life is so interesting that why on earth did you need to tie her to someone young?
I don't know.
I mean, because she's
is she still alive, or she
No,
was
she
alive when that
died.
movie came out? Wasn't she?
She might have died right before it did. I know she didn't think much of the blogger, but I mean,
yes, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah,
you have to think she was like in her late 80s, and she probably doesn't even know what a blog is. And somebody asked her, you know, I mean, what would you say? You know, I mean, this person couldn't put a candle to what Julia Child accomplished and did. And, you know, you're kind of saying, what do you think of this person cooking out of your book? And, you know, I mean, I think that, you know, they kind of were hard on Julia Child for being not pleased by it, but, you know, who knows what context they even told her about it. You know, I mean,
just because you have a fan of your work does not mean you have to like them piggybacking off your name. Am I saying that right, or is that rude?
I think that might, I mean, you know, it's hard to say because, you know, we don't know exactly how they explained what this woman was doing.
Right.
You know, if you're saying she got this huge book deal because she was cooking out of your book and stuff, you know, maybe, you know, but they might have, who knows how it was presented to her. But what I'm saying is that, like, so much of her life was so interesting beyond cooking and being a pioneer with that would make a really interesting story. Although they probably can't say a lot of her spy days.
Yeah, probably.
You know,
I want to know about that.
But the idea that the CIA had her picture on their website probably indicates she was a little bit more than a secretary or something.
Yeah,
probably.
but you know, I mean,
Jen, will you please read us the hometown haunt for this week?
Yes, this is from our friend Katie. Hi, ladies. Sorry, it's Christina and Jen's friend Katie, and I recently realized that I actually met Kat as well at the soup party that Christina and I hosted at my house right before COVID hit.
It was a very fun party. Sorry, Jen.
And I was not there because I think I was working at Amazon, and that's why I wasn't there. Okay. Anyway, I was thinking about this recently because the actual story I have connected to it happened on Easter. When I was in college, Kent State, there were plenty of campus legends around, but the one I recall specifically was the one about the haunted dorm. Stouffer Hall, which was closed my entire 4.5 years there and eventually demolished. It was the standard tale of a student who hanged themselves in their room and then haunted the building in death. You could apparently see their spirits still in there hanging from the noose. Over Easter weekend, my freshman year, there was a very small group of my friends on campus still, and we decided that at midnight on Saturday night was the perfect time to trapeze across campus to the Taco Bell. We were all feeling pretty goofy that night, and we took a meandering path that went by Stouffer Hall. Someone had the idea that we should see if we could go on. And lo and behold, the first set of doors we checked was open. As the chicken / most practical member of the group, I have a firm policy for my life about not doing things that would start off a horror movie. So I stood guard at the door, making sure it was propped open. It would not slam shut to trap us in there and murder us all. Other members of the group didn't go much farther in, but came back after a quick look saying that it was weird in there, but nothing more. Nothing big, but a fun and memorable night of feeling vaguely spooked. I think we may have tried to go in again later, but we never found the building unlocked again. I enjoyed the show, even if I sometimes have to pause it when it gets too dark out for me to listen to scary stuff. And I hope to see you again after the pandemic, Katie.
Oh, that's a good story. Thank you, Katie. But I would also feel really weird if I had Taco Bell and trapezed myself through the campus. It was trapesed.
It was before.
She wrote trapesed, but you read it as trapezed.
I'm sorry.
I didn't want to stop you, but I was just like,
I like easy for a joke. Stupid.
You're not stupid. You and I tonight have been slip sliding all over all the copy that we've had to read.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
and in my defense, I have been a hermit for the past, I don't know, however many months, and
it's been like 13 months
much with people.
Yeah.
So sorry, Katie, really I messed up that word.
That's a really sweet story. I like it. You know, it seems like on campuses there's always those stories of, although I have to say, like my freshman year I was at UC and I was in Daniels Hall, and why this hall has not been torn down I don't understand. Students still live in it. It like had windows you could fall out of, and somebody got really drunk and actually fell out my freshman year and died.
No.
You know, and it's because, you know, you have college students, alcohol, doing stupid stuff in a high-rise building with windows you could open from high places, you know.
Yeah.
I suspect more dorms now probably have screens or something to sort of keep students more. I mean, obviously their judgment's always going to be bad.
Yeah.
Or they open at the top and the opening's not big enough for them to go through, maybe.
And I have to say, I remember fondly going to Zantigo late at night. You know, the college was the time when you could go to Zantigo at midnight or 3 a.m. and not get heartburn. You know, I miss those days.
Oh, I miss the garbage plate in Rochester. I went to RIT for a couple years, Rochester Institute of Technology. And my dorm, I was on the 8th floor. It had a balcony that you could go out on. I mean, it wasn't huge, but our railing was always a little wonky. So we were careful not to lean on it. But I think eventually they renovated everything and took those balconies away, because I think people did. I vaguely remember rumors of people jumping off of them. Whether or not they were true or not, I'm not sure. But
yeah, I think this story was actually not an intentional thing. I think the person just fell, like they were really drunk. And I mean, you know, that's not that unusual with college. You have people away from home and doing things that are, you know, with their freedom that, you know, is slightly on the dangerous side, but you know.
It's interesting about Stouffer Hall, though. It reminds me at Ohio University's campus, they had like a haunted room that you could see the devil's face in. That's what this reminds me of. Sorry, Jen, I interrupted you.
No, I was just gonna say we had someone, they were probably drunk, I'm not sure, but the fire alarm one night went off at like 2:00 in the morning, and we all had to go downstairs in our pajamas and everything. And come to find out, someone had put a sandwich or something in aluminum foil in the microwave in the common area, and it set the microwave on fire.
Oh, whoa, fun.
I mean, people used to set the alarms off all the time when I was in college. Just they set them off for fun.
Always the first 2 weeks of school, no one got any sleep because somebody was always pulling the fire alarm.
And they used to always joke about how, like, I forget which hall it was, which was a girls' dorm. They always said more guys came out than girls. The fire alarm went off, which is
I
kind of
had
funny.
co-ed dorms.
I was in a co-ed dorm too. I was
never one of those all girls only.
Well, you know,
I never was either.
It's interesting because, you know, when my mom was in college, for example, I mean, you wouldn't have been allowed to bring visitors into your.
Oh no.
You know, that's a more recent thing.
Yeah.
But I'm sure.
I was gonna say, come to think of it, I was surrounded by boys. All the rooms around me were boys.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You know, I think it would be really interesting to have you know, an episode about university hauntings, because I'm sure that there's, you know, tales at Xavier and UC and all the local universities. It would be interesting to see.
I had started writing a book on that, so.
Oh yes.
My first book was about IU.
Have you heard anything about Kent State other than that, like because of the shooting and everything that happened there?
I haven't heard of any ghosts attributed explicitly to the shooting, but it definitely had some ghosts there. My mom's went to Kent State for a few years, and she had some stories to share with me. And she went in the 60s. So the place was haunted back then. So yeah, we can totally collect a series of stories from around Ohio, because we have Ohio University that is famous for its pentagrams, and then University of Cincinnati. I know, right?
This could be the new U.S. News and World Report rating. You know, it's haunting rating.
They have a new program at Ohio State. It's all about learning how to do demonic rituals and sacrifice young babies and have them for lunch.
Yes. And we cannot forget about the Ohio State University. Never forget to say the before it. And
what did I say? I always get them confused.
No, you didn't. No, Ohio University is a different one. You were correct.
Yeah, that's an Athens.
I remember. Yeah, Ohio. Ohio University's colors are, I think, green and white, or green and yellow, and
like that.
The Ohio State is crimson and cream, which I'm going to say is also Indiana University's. So again, I'm confused a lot. I also get Ohio State confused a lot for University of Oklahoma. Because one's OSU and there's Oklahoma State University, but their colors are orange and black. But then there's also University of Oklahoma, who is also crimson and cream, but also an O and a U, or a U and an O. And my dyslexic butt always gets them confused. So I have to sit there and look at them.
Well, you know, Ohio State is like its own city, so I'm sure
really
there's many ghost stories. You know, such a giant institution.
Oh yeah, they have Mirror Lake. They have the Pink Lady. They have a few. So
yeah, I mean, so and if
that's
you have
a good question for John.
Yeah, and if you have a haunting story from your college, you know, whether it's at the school or like maybe one of the weird apartments that are next to your school that you went to, you know, definitely write us in. What's the email address?
hometownhauntedmail@gmail.com.
Yeah, and tell us about your college haunting story. Was it like in the middle of the night you saw glowing eyes, or, you know, I mean, because it seems like when you're in college is the time you're walking around at 4 a.m. outside. That happens less when you're my age, you know. But maybe
unless you're a paranormal investigator, and then you're still out.
We hope that maybe one day we are investigating at that time of night, but you know, it's not something I've been doing recently for sure.
Okay. So shall we tie this up into a neat little bow?
I think so. This is an interesting show. I think we've got a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for joining us for another wonderful episode of the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities presents Hometown Haunts. I'm your host, Cat Loco, along with me, Christina Wald and Jen Kohler. If you have your own ghost story, paranormal experience, creepy cryptid, or urban legend, or any other fun, weird history fact, you can email that over to us at hometownhauntedmail@gmail.com. This is Kat signing off. Have a great week.